Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel and welcome to this video. Today I will show you how I painted this fall scenery, and for that I will be using a Centenaire watercolor paper. This is 100% cotton, 300 GSM or 140 pounds. Also for the watercolors I will be using Sennelier watercolors. This is a set of 36 watercolors and I will be using primary red, some Scarlet lacquer, sap green, Venetian red, yellow ochre, and ultramarine. Also, I will be using Sepia from White Nights. For the brushes, I will be using this Panart number 8 mop brush, Raphael number 8 brush round, number 6 round brush, Panart number 2 detail brush, and a detailed no-name detail brush. Sketch is available for download. It is on my Patreon, so if you join for free on my Patreon, you will have access for all the outlines that I share there. Link is in the description box if you want to check it out. So I will be starting with wetting my pens just to activate them, and also I will add a little bit of the water with a spray bottle directly onto my paper. I won't be wetting the entire paper, but just adding a little bit of the water with a spray bottle, and on top I will sprinkle some yellow ochre, and then with this Panart mop brush I will be adding a bit of the color, starting with yellow ochre. If you're wondering why did I spray with a spray bottle, it's because I did place a little bit of the water onto my paper, so when I touch it with pigment, it will spread slightly in some parts, creating beautiful soft edges, and in some other parts I will be having a harsher edges. So that was something that I was aiming to do when I used that spray bottle. A little bit of the Scarlet lacquer mixed in with yellow ochre to paint in on top of my previous layer of just yellow ochre to create variation in color for my leaves. So I'm just tapping it again here and there, adding some oranges, and also you can see me at the edges of the tree. I'm just tapping in with the tip of my brush, adding some leaves. I don't want to have one strong shape. I do want to have some leaves outside of the edges, singular ones, just to create that impression of a tree. Because my paper is wet, everything is blending together, and these little leaves on sides will create and suggest that foliage. So tapping in also a little bit of the Venetian red. Quite nice, beautiful, for if you ask me, beautiful fall color. And then I will pick up some sepia and add it at the bottom. When you're looking at the tree, there are some like clusters of tree, so I'm just thinking where I want to place my those clusters of leaves, and at the bottom of them I'm painting in the shadows with sepia. And going up, I will be painting lighter, and going down on the tree, I will be using a little bit more saturated colors. So tapping in a little bit more of the yellow ochre. And now I'm just sprinkling some clean water to create nice textures, but you have to make sure that your paper is not too wet, that you don't have puddles. I did dry it slightly and then on top added a little bit more of the splatters because my paper was too wet and those, I guess that paint was just sitting on top of the water. Afterwards I dried it completely. And now I will be adding a second layer, a little bit more of the details, again using same colors, but this time I did not splatter. I'm painting wet on dry, adding yellow ochre mixed in with scarlet lacquer, also with primary red, some Venetian red, and also some sepia. And I won't be painting the entire tree this time, just some parts of it. And again, you can see I'm adding blobs of paint to impress a lot of leaves at one spot, and also painting some singular leaves. With sepia, I will be painting a tree trunk. And again, for the tree trunk, I do want to have broken lines from my branches. And I also do want to make it appear like they're peeking through some of the leaves. So I'm not going to just paint the branches on top of my tree. Make sure you don't paint all of the branches on top. Just make a couple that are peeking through here and there in the leaves. And they're just partly visible. Also, some parts of the paper of my tree are still wet, so when I add a watercolor there, it will spread, but that's fine with me. It will create also a little bit of the shadow in that part. So as I said, I'm fine with that. And don't just paint too much of those branches. Gonna make my tree trunk a little bit thicker. Also add like that. I will be splattering again a little bit of the yellow ochre on top. And I will also use this smaller detail brush to add in a couple of smaller branches. Again, using the same colors, yellow ochre mixed in with scarlet lacquer, I will be painting the barn, and I'm painting wet on dry, so I did not wet the barn before, and I'm painting, I guess, pretty fast so my paint doesn't dry. And while going on both sides and all parts of the barn, I'm just adding a little bit more of the water in my brush, making some parts a little bit lighter, also picking up a little bit of the yellow ochre, picking up a little bit of scarlet lacquer, picking up the mix of those two here and there, and just creating variation in colors. Again, making sure that a little bit more saturated and darker pigments I'm using in places where I want my shadows to be. So remember, this is an old barn, so some parts are faded, some parts stayed a little bit more vibrant. So now mixed some sub green with a little bit of the sepia, painting in one green bush on the side. And underneath the barn, I'm using mix of sepia and again those colors that I did use for the barn. And I'm not gonna go all the way to the edges, just leaving some white spots around. Also adding a little bit of the color, some ultramarine and sepia mixed for the sky. And I'm not gonna paint the entire sky. You can see just went around the barn and underneath the tree. Everything else I will not paint. So adding some details underneath the barn using sap green and sepia. This is still wet, so everything is bleeding again and blending. But when it dries, we will be adding more details. With sepia and some sap green, a little bit of ultramarine, I'm painting in the roof for my barn. So the barn that I painted is still wet. I'm trying to avoid those edges. I picked up a little bit of the paint with a paper towel just to create nice variation in the bottom part. So I dried it fully, and after it's dried, adding a bit more details with orange mixed scarlet lacquer and yellow ochre. Also added a little bit of the sepia now to that mix, and I will paint in some details to the barn, just those edges of my boards, and I'm not gonna paint all of the boards, all of the wood boards. I'm just gonna paint some of the lines to suggest that there are wooden boards, that this barn is made out of the wooden boards. So now I'm painting a shadow underneath the roof, mixed in a little bit of the sepia and some orange. And also I'm gonna paint the shadows underneath the windows and the windows itself. Inside I'm painting quite dark. I've used sepia and ultramarine mix, rinsed my brush, and just spreading a little bit of the paint to make one part of the window a little bit lighter. And again, with mix of ultramarine and some sap green, I will be painting the doors, or just some part of the doors. As I said, remember, this is an old barn, so everything is wiggly and wobbly. Same color I will use for the windows. Adding a little bit of the sepia for the shadows. And those wooden boards on the doors, again, I will be painting with sepia and a little bit of the Venetian red mix. And I'm not being too precise with this either. Some grasses. And again, I'm going to splatter to add a little bit more details to the bottom part. And also add a little bit of the color just at the bottom of my barn, where maybe it's dirty slightly. Dry brushing to suggest a pathway to the barn. So adding a little bit more of the details again to the doors. I'm gonna splatter again, a couple of splatters on the tree, add a little bit more details now that it is dry. Again, dry it all fully and add just a little bit more of the paint on top of my barn here and there. It was looking washed out, so I wanted to add a little bit more of the pigment here and there. Mixed in again a very saturated sepia and ultramarine, the paint in the edge of the roof for the barn. Just gonna add a couple of more details all around, and with that I'll be finishing off my fall painting. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and if you did, please hit the like button, share it, comment, and if you haven't still, please do subscribe to my channel because I have many tutorials here. I'm sure you will find something for yourself. Again, thank you so much for joining me today, for painting with me, and I hope I will see you next time. Bye!